All right, I'm excited to be here today with my new friend, Taylor Winchester. Taylor is an industry leader at the music industry. He has worked with labels like Epitaph, Nonesuch, and Concord Music Group, promoters like Live Nation and Danny Wimmer Presents. He's helped artist teams like John Legend, Billy Strings, and Leon Rhymes to be able to grow their reach and ticket sales. And today he focuses on building tech and tools to help artists and teams to connect with an audience. And so he leads business growth at Foundy, which equips artists with cutting-edge marketing and ad tools to be able to connect with their fans. So I'm really excited to have him on the podcast today to talk a little bit about the current state of the music industry and how, in many ways, it's like harder than ever to actually build a relationship and connect with your fans. What are some of the tools that are available so that you actually can build a real relationship? So, Taylor, thanks for taking time to be on the podcast today.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So to kick things off, maybe you could share a little bit about your background and how you became part of Foundy.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I mean, my career started in the industry more on the live side with Live Nation. I worked at a 2,000 cap club venue in Charlotte, North Carolina called the Fillmore. We also had a boutique amphitheater out back that was about 5,000 cap, and worked in Live Nation or at Live Nation for a little over 5 years, and kind of worked into sports for a short stint after Live Nation, and then came back into music. Worked more in my own self, kind of a freelance capacity, if you will, as a consultant, working on some tour marketing efforts, working with festivals for digital marketing and media buying strategies. And then in 2021, I joined the Foundy team as director of revenue, really wearing many hats. I mean, we are a relatively smaller team. So, I do a little bit of everything from, of course, business development, building relationships across the industry with folks and labels and artists and teams that are using our tools as a part of their marketing and media mix. And the tools are built to be self-serve. So, anybody can sign up for a Foundy account. There are some paid tiers as well that provide a few more detailed or more, I guess, robust tools, if you will. But so today I kind of do a combination of product development with the team and strategy on that front, but then also we converse and consult with the folks that are using our platform in terms of their marketing strategy, some of their goals, ways to utilize our tools within their wider maybe marketing mix.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds very relatable. I feel like I'm in a similar territory. So, having built these tools and worked directly with artists to kind of help them to cut through the noise and connect with their fans, I'm wondering, what have you found to be sort of like the biggest, let's say, like the problems of the music industry right now, and the problems specifically that you set out to solve with Foundy? And I'd be curious to hear, your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I think it could go in many different directions, probably. I think data is always a challenge with marketing specifically. In terms of trying to not only capture fan data and own some of that data, but also then connecting the dots on attribution, and that's one of the questions we get quite often. And in the space of streaming in today's world, it's the DSPs don't necessarily share this explicit data as to know where that stream came from. So, that's one of the biggest challenges. I mean, we don't necessarily have tools that can overcome those direct challenges in the sense of being able to hack into, Spotify and know that the person that's listening came from this specific ad per se. But, we equipped artists and artist teams with pre-save pages, tools that allow capturing kind of that first party data, the emails, SMS throughout that flow or that funnel. And that allows obviously those teams and artists to then directly communicate with those fans and kind of continue to evolve that fan journey from just maybe the first listen touch point in terms of engagement with our tools and our pre-save pages or music listening pages, down into then obviously kind of finding ways to remarket to them based on different touch points that you might have as well.
Cool. Yeah, I was literally just having a conversation with one of our clients like 2 days ago, a band called First to 11, and they have over 690 million streams on their YouTube channel for their music. And they were promoting their tour, and they're doing they basically had created a campaign to sell tickets to their shows. And we were building a funnel for them. And there's a moment where I was like, okay, so yeah, we're going to track, we're going to like set up like payment processing so you can like sell these. And they're like, well, actually, like we don't have access to that like info. I'm like, wait, what? Like you don't know, like there's no way for you to be able to like, like one, like have a list of like who the people were that bought the tickets, or, to be able to send like a tracking event, when someone purchases it. They're like, yeah, no, it's just like this black box. Like, what?
Yeah, it's a little backwards in some ways. I mean, having worked at the venue side and the promoter side and been a talent buyer and then marketing shows, like I kind of understand being on that side that in many ways as the promoter, you're paying for the artist to come, and then you're also in most cases doing a lot of the marketing, but at the same time you're relying on that artist to do their own marketing for that said same show. And in many ways, I think there could be arguments made that data should be passed along to the artist for sure. But yeah, the ticketing systems is a whole nother kind of battle and challenge in terms of tracking, placing pixels and tracking kind of customer journeys, and not only building audience, but just showing attribution of where those purchases are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think with that, though, what I'm seeing, and this goes, I think, broader across multiple industries, not just music, but we're seeing more and more of I guess, in terms of the way to measure or kind of look at your approach isn't so much driving just strictly based off of attribution, because 2010 to 2015, 16, really probably even a little bit later, like you could just go to Facebook and Instagram and run ads and you could very easily see that attribution. But with the advancement of consumer privacy laws and protection around data, more people are now opting out of that kind of tracking per se. So oftentimes we just kind of recommend like take a traditional media approach, in the sense of you need to try to find ways to reach people across multiple channels instead of just social media. Obviously, that first party data is important because you can have a direct conversation with those fans. But also, are there tools, and this is where Foundy comes into play, is like creating tools that allow what we call a little bit of a democratizing advertising. And, it formerly you'd have to go direct to some of these major media publishers like a Rolling Stone or Pitchfork, or, even think about cable TV. If you wanted to get a 30-second commercial spot in somebody's living room to promote a show or promote an album release, you have to go direct and pay a pretty massive minimum. So, there are tools out there. Foundy is one of them that allow a little bit more access to cast a wider net in terms of your paid media. And, so look at ways that you can reach people where they are instead of just assuming they're only going to be on social media. Social media obviously is still very important, but just looking at ways to kind of think about a more comprehensive approach, which you probably, based on some of the stuff I've read and seen from or listened to in your other podcasts, you talk about that a little bit too. Creating that funnel is important, and finding those multiple touch points down that journey is equally important.
100%. So yeah, we were just talking about owning your fan data, rather than building your platform on building your audience on a platform that you don't fully own, while also acknowledging the benefit of these tools and these platforms that billions of people who use them every day. I'm curious what you found working best in terms of a compelling reason for fans to sign up for an email list, or a compelling reason for them to kind of enter the funnel. Like what are some of the things that you see working best right now for Foundy?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And it's a case by case scenario, but like in many cases, we're not as involved in that specific piece of it. We definitely make recommendations and try to help maybe guide strategy or give ideas based on past experiences. And, my past experience, it's always finding a good incentive, and that incentive obviously depends on touring or merch packages with a new album release. Really as opposed to just, hey, sign up for weekly newsletters, like what's that call to action that's going to differentiate yourself from any other newsletter that's out there, or email lists. So I think looking at creative ways there, also, giving a little more, and this is, I think, a little more challenging in some ways, because you really need to think this through, but what type of content are you actually distributing on that newsletter list or that email list? Is it just sales? Because if it's a salesy kind of approach, every time I get an email, then I'm more likely to probably remove myself from that list. So, I think just thinking about a way that incentivizes somebody to sign up that gives them that call to action. And that could be, again, merch package giveaways, ticket giveaways. Those types of call to actions are probably going to drive the needle a little bit further than just a generic, like, don't miss the upcoming news from my newsletter list.
Yeah, super smart. So it sounds like what you're saying is that, the best way to do it is to create a good incentive or a reason why they're joining, as opposed to just like joining for like notifications. But if you actually have a gift or something valuable that you have as something that you're giving to them, then it's a good, compelling reason for them to join. Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of think about it similar to like a Patreon, right? Like, why would somebody sign up? So can you give, and obviously Patreon, oftentimes you're monetizing that as opposed to like, somebody's not paying to sign up for a newsletter list, but you, what kind of content can you give that is outside of and separate from what they're going to get from your social media account, or from just like doing some quick research online? And that can be special. It can be incentivized based on a giveaway, or it could just be really cool content and behind the scenes footage that you don't necessarily see on social media that you get by being on the newsletter list.
Sweet. So, how about in terms of monetization? For artists who've started like building a list, and let's say it's like first party data, like a phone number or an email address, and now they're looking at how do we build a deeper relationship with those fans, and how do we start to turn a more casual listener into like a dedicated fan, and someone that actually supports you and buys something from you. Have you seen any particular offers or things that are working right now as it relates to artists being able to monetize their audience?
I don't have any specific examples at the moment, but I would say I think we're definitely in a period where we should be a little more cognizant and careful about being over salesy and just trying to monetize, right? I was reading something the other day that somebody shared on LinkedIn that was talking about the the time frame of essentially all these like album variants of just basically the same album, just different colors, and those different types of variants that some fans might start to feel like all you're doing is pushing like another sale as opposed to really kind of building the relationship with the fans. And there's tons of content out there nowadays that talks about the value of creating a really, engaged fan as opposed to just somebody that streams or buys one album and then moves on to the next. So I think you have to be careful about it. So I don't have like a specific example of things that are working well, but I would say using, whether it's a newsletter or social media post or whatever, really communication, whether you're putting content out there, is like find a balance between asking for something from that fan and giving the fan something. And that goes back to like behind the scenes footage, or Q&As on Instagram stories, or something that gives you the, think about your content strategy in terms of something that's going to build value for that engaged fan and get an engaged listener, as opposed to just trying to move product. And then I think more times than not, you can, as you get those engagement touch points, you can find ways to then work that into the next level of that communication in terms of selling a product.
Awesome. I like it. Yeah, it's not lost on me that the director of revenue, at the company, the number one piece of advice that you just shared around monetization is, not, focusing so much on the sales aspect of it and focusing more on the value that you're providing and showing up and doing it in a way that you're focusing on connecting and building a relationship. And from there, one way to do that is by having exclusive content that they wouldn't get anywhere else. But it's, the most important thing is kind of focusing on the relationship, and you're setting things up in a way that you are providing value, and you're not pushing people away because they think all you're in, it's just me.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I feel like this word has gotten overused but it is always relevant, and is that authenticity, being authentic in terms of the way you put content out and really being yourself, but understanding and recognizing that authenticity is what's going to really, it's not always the music that connects the fan with the artist. It's a lot of it is the personality, the brand, the authenticity behind that artist, that people connect with, So obviously the music needs to speak for itself to a certain degree, but it's also much more than just that. So yeah, as to your point, Michael, I mean, as somebody that's worked in a sales capacity and in growing business, my MO is really more relationship building, showing value, even if it doesn't necessarily mean a direct sale for me right away. It's more about what can I bring to the table in an authentic manner that helps clients or potential clients, prospects as well, and provides that value. And I think artists can approach that in a very similar way in terms of what are you giving to your fans outside of just the music.
That's great. It reminds me of a concept I heard as it relates to like marketing and sales. That one of the strongest words, in fact, I think that they did like a study on like what were like the strongest, most compelling words in marketing, and up at like near the top of the list was the word you, and down low like on the list was like I or me or we. And the takeaway was that the marketing, like it when it's focused on providing value and focused on the other person, that is a lot more relevant, and it shows people that you care, and it kind of comes back to the roots of what you're talking about.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And it's, people want to find ways to relate, especially if I mean, you can relate to a song, of course, but if you're an artist and you're trying to create kind of a consistent and lifelong fan, there's got to be more than just that one song that captures that relatability, and I think that goes for many things outside of music as well. And but obviously, in terms of artistry and building a following, it's not just putting out good music anymore. Which is, as somebody that's also a creator myself, like I struggle because I'm not doing the creative piece full time. But it's much easier for me to tell folks what they should be doing content strategy wise and putting out 3 reels a day on Instagram than it is for me to go create that content myself. So I understand the struggle, but it people don't say be authentic just to say it. That really is what people relate to when you think about why you get drawn to other people's social channels or whatever content they're putting out.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective. What do you think are some of the pervasive like myths or misconceptions that people have about music and about the music industry that, looking back in the future, will be like, oh, like that just wasn't true?
Great question. One of the first things I think about is something that our platform offers is programmatic advertising, and not to be so me and us, here, but
Hey,
I look
you're
at
building it for the folks who are listening to this right here, so it's definitely I know where it's coming from.
yeah, true, and I think about it in terms of marketing in general, right? And obviously, if any independent artist out there has to think about resources are always a struggle, in the sense of investing in your own career, not only in the money that it takes to produce music or put an album out, but how are you trying to grow the fan base outside of just your organic methods of TikTok and Instagram, right? And advertising is something that we kind of focus on, and we have tools specifically. Programmatic advertising are primarily what we offer at the moment. And, I've, as an industry, I've seen and hear folks kind of just stick to their guns of paid social media. But there are so many potential fans out there that are listening to podcasts and streaming audio. Your podcast is a perfect example of that. So how do you get advertisements on that? Obviously, you can go directly to somebody like yourself and say, hey, we want to sponsor or something to that degree. But, there are other tools out there. And the same thing goes for like connected TV advertising. So, to come back to your question, the one of the myths I hear is that like, oh, well, we're not seeing conversions from display banner ads or connected TV or streaming audio. And that's a fair statement to say, but it kind of goes back to my point of, if you have an affordable way to expand your marketing efforts outside of only doing paid Instagram ads, why would you not consider that and think bigger picture instead of expecting an immediate kind of ROI or return on ad spend from every campaign? Because it's much more, especially as an indie artist, is much more of a long tail game than it is like an immediate satisfaction in terms of like spending $500 here and expecting 5,000 streams from that $500. So I think, that's one thing that I would say in terms of, I don't know if it's a myth per se, but it's something that I feel like as an industry, if you look at other major kind of direct to consumer industries that are growing brands, they're hitting people with digital out of home banners, billboards, things that seem unrealistic as an independent artist, but Foundy is a perfect example of tools that can help you expand your reach with some of your paid efforts outside of just the normal platforms that have been so your most music artists and teams are accustomed to using.
Mm, got it. That sounds really cool. Programmatic advertising. I'd be curious to hear what that means exactly compared to like if someone's running ads on like Meta or YouTube or something. What does it mean to have like programmatic advertising?
Yeah, so it's, and I always speak in terms of not replacing what you're doing on Meta or YouTube. Those are obviously super important as well, but it's reaching people where they are based on a few more data points, right? So I forget exactly the year, but there was a couple of years ago where there was something happened with Meta in the sense of they were no longer allowed to essentially track pixels on third party sites,
Yeah,
right?
iOS 14.
Yeah, exactly. So if you think about the impact that has on Meta ads, that reduces their data in terms of building audiences. So now Meta's building audiences based on the user's interaction across Instagram or Meta, right? So if I like a comment or I like a post that is, I don't know, an older, let's say grandma, grandpa making a reel, and it's about gardening, then I'm looped into this kind of gardening audience, right? Or if I see a hip hop song that I'm like, oh, that's cool and I like it, now all of a sudden I'm considered a fan of that. But in my mind, there's so many like crossovers there. With programmatic, what you're doing is using a much more broader, I guess, like resource of data in the sense that it's pulling in audiences from all different touch points because it's kind of using a newer approach with the data that's out there and with AI tools and things that are even still above my head when it comes to the tech side of it. But ultimately, it's also about reaching people where they are and the content that they're consuming, as opposed to only on a social media platform. And with programmatic, it's kind of bidding in real time and auto optimizing, as our Instagram ads and those things are optimizing based on the data that they have. With programmatic, you can be serving across multiple devices, device types, multiple placement and inventory places, and all of that can be learning in the same time to an extent, so that it's a little bit smarter. Oh, it looks like I froze up there for a second. Sorry. It's a little bit smarter. But yeah, so I mean, programmatic, it's bidding in real time across multiple different ad networks, multiple ad exchanges to really find that lower cost and reaching people where they are across multiple different touch points. Again, be that, display banners while they're reading an article about Americana music, you can reach somebody in that kind of capacity. And it's a little bit different than obviously being on somebody's stories that they're swiping through, or the disruption there is a little bit different, and using that data to be smarter, that's what programmatic really focuses on.
Cool. That's super interesting. So, Taylor, if we were kind of like going to zoom out and look at the future of the music industry and kind of what's around the corner, I'd be curious to hear your perspective on. Obviously, no one has a crystal ball, and things often, like turn out very different than what we expect. But it was the quote, like, "Man plans and God laughs." But I'm curious to hear your perspective on, um, based on at the time of recording this, there's like some huge waves happening with AI, and there's tech is advancing really quickly, and there's also many things that are kind of broken with the existing music industry. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on where you think things are going, and if an artist is like listed in this right now, and they're looking at kind of if there's these different waves of momentum, and there's like a wave cresting, and if you swim along with it at the right time, you can kind of like hit that, you can catch the wave. Curious if you see any of those waves emerging, and what you think those are.
Mm, that's a tough question to answer. Yeah, I mean, I think for one, it's like don't be. I mean, there's understandable reasons to be a little concerned or fearful of AI and how it's impacting the creative process. Or maybe not impacting the creative process, but I've heard stories of Spotify creating their own music that they're streaming
Really?
out there. Yeah, I read something the other day where like um, the guy was speaking more in terms of kind of the atmospheric ambient music, stuff that I listen to a lot while I'm working. That's just kind of
Yeah.
lo-fi vibes. And,
Hmm.
with artificial intelligence, as if you're an artist that creates that type of music, I could understand a fear that maybe how are you going to cut through the noise of some AI.
Yeah.
But how do you also lean in and utilize some of those tools as a part of your process, whether it's creation or, um, the business side of things. And so I don't really have a great answer in terms of how to catch the right wave, but I would just say, trying to find ways to stay motivated. And that's something that I struggle with as a creator myself, and just, separating yourself a little bit from all of the noise and chaos out there and reason to be fearful, and just know that you're doing it for the reason of creating and in the long game, and trying to balance the expectation, I think, is important. And in a world where everything is changing so quickly, that feels a little bit more disruptive and harder to do, I feel like, these days. But I think that ultimately, we have to remember why we started as a creator, and what draws us or drew us into playing an instrument or writing a song, or really that process, and trust the process, and know that as new tools come out there, how do you start to leverage some of them without feeling overwhelmed? And I don't know that there's an easy way to do that. If there were, we'd all have scored by now and really be great at it. But yeah, I think that is probably the best advice I could give somebody, is just kind of trusting the process and staying true to yourself as much as possible.
Mm. I like it. Yeah, it feels like a good answer because it's kind of all we can do, right? It's to show up and keep, learning and adapting and being resilient. And uh, as I think about that surfer analogy, it's sort of like, coming to balance with like the fact that it's, hey, like we are surfing and it's like another wave, and like, yeah, we can like try to like, try to catch it. But we can talk about the wave as it's kind of like approaching. But like, at a certain point, you have to kind of like try to swim along with it. And maybe you'll catch it, maybe you won't. But the most important thing is the balance of just like showing up and trying and kind of like seeing what's happening. And that's probably always going to be true, regardless of which surfboard that we're using.
Yeah, knowing that there's ebbs and flows, and as somebody that, we talked prior to kind of starting this, I've gone down a path of getting certified to teach meditation, and I think that is one of the biggest things that I've learned in that process, is that knowing that in everything you do in life, there's going to be peaks and valleys, there's going to be good times, bad times, struggles, and kind of the ecstatic wins of celebrating those wins, but trying to maintain that certain level of consistency throughout all of that is, is something that I think is important. And knowing that the thing that I love about being a creative, and writing and releasing music, is that if you ever think about a legacy, and especially if we like forget about the whole sense of money and monetization of everything for a moment, like the best thing you can do in terms of leaving something behind is that legacy of like art and creativity, and releasing something that you put together, possibly obviously with others. But in my mind, that's way more value than just leaving behind a certain amount of money, because the money's only going to get you so much.
Mm, I like it. Yeah, like leaving a legacy through the art that you create. And I mean, certainly that's the case for a lot of these like catalogs, that are like passed down like generation to generation. Mm, cool. Well, Taylor, it's been fun connecting today, and talk a little bit about the current state of the music industry, where things are headed, and how to stay balanced as we're surfing the waves. And appreciate you being on the podcast. And would love to hear a little bit more about the tool that you've built. And if an artist is watching or listening to this right now and they're interested in learning more, could you share like a little bit of a deep dive into maybe like what the journey looks like for an artist who kind of comes to your website and signs up, and what it'll look like as they start using the tool?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's we have free accounts that you can sign up for, that anybody can go. It's just found.ee, and you'll find us there. But you create an account, and I think the lowest hanging fruit in terms of tools for independent artists are going to be our pre-save or music page release pages. So you can, and we have plenty of resources on like our blog and help center in terms of kind of getting started. But yeah, if you're going to release an album or release a single, you want to be able to start to build the momentum and build some of the engagement and tell people. And there are many other tools out there to do it as well. But we kind of look at ourselves as providing a little bit more robust of a toolkit. So in addition to the pre-save page, you have trackable short links that can include QR codes. So if you are doing a tour, you can obviously have merch out there and a QR code that people scan and go to one of those pages that you create. That's building all of that audience, just like you've probably talked in the past about Meta and Meta Pixels or Google Analytics code. Every Foundy account has that. So you're kind of tracking those engagements and touch points along that journey. And then there's other tools in terms of like email capture modals that you can deploy on your website from our tool. And I, as somebody that loves and uses MailChimp for certain things, it's also can be super complicated to get a MailChimp pop-up banner onto your website. Ours is super simple and can trigger off of different audience touch points, and then the advertisement tool as well. There's some, if an artist wants to get their release on a banner promoting their release, and they could embed a YouTube video into a little HTML5 ad unit and then have that ad unit show up on NPR or Rolling Stone or Paste Magazine, and there's no minimum spend to do it. So that's the great piece of the advertising side, is reaching potential music fans on music websites while they're consuming content around, culturally related things. So that's a quick high level overview of it. Welcome anybody to kind of find us online. And, we usually try to host quarterly webinars. We've been a little behind on that, but there's some content on YouTube from past webinars out there as well.
All right. Fantastic. Well, like always, we'll put all the links in the show notes for easy access. And Taylor, thanks again for being on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael, for having me.